So, 06/45/2017, I challenge you.
I'm ready for it.
Once upon a time, pond scum became all life on Earth. Stupid.
Are Bengal tigers related to Burmese tigers and all other tiger species? Are all known species of tiger related to each other and all other panthers? Are all panthers related to felines, scimitar cats, and other felids?
Let us begin with the cat clade. We know the 8 main lineages go back to the Pseudaiurus, which it descended from the Proailurus. Proailurus is considered largely to be the first true cat, and the ancestor of the entire cat family. Most studies support this, placing Polaris at the basal member of the feline classification. The bones of Proailurus are very similar to the living viverids and fossa of Madagascar today. Cat connoisseurs have long known that their feline friends have a wild origin. Now scientists have identified that the house cat's maternal ancestors are traced back to one place, the Fertile Crescent. Genetics proves that there are 8 main lineages of the feline cat order. 7 of the 8 major cat lineages are linked by hybridization. Only one, the Bay cat lineage, has not been linked to hybridization, but this is speculation to this day. These 8 lineages, which are now 37 different species, all descended from 8 types of base cats. The puma ancestor gave rise to the cheetah and the jaguar of today. The lynx gave rise to the Iberian and Canadian bobcats of today, and so on down the line. Today we have 44 cat breeds alone, just in the common house cat. As you can see, it is very easy to track something back to a single species. Well, what happened when you track back to the 8 main lineages? Well, when you find the branch narrows, you get to a few base cats, like the Pseudaiurus and the Proailurus. Even a 2005 Phylogeny study placed the Proailurus as a basal member of the feline family. So, not only do we have genetic data to support that this cat gave rise to all the cat kinds we see today, we can also see that the genetic data shows extinct felids found in the fossil record were cats as well. They just died out. We creationists could easily say that God had created 2 or 3 separate types of cat in the beginning, during creation week. Why not? It just seems redundant to me, but I cannot know for sure. But it's just as plausible that only one type of feline needed to exist during creation, as long as it contained all of the genetic diversity and heterozygosity needed to produce what we see in the world today. The evidence seems to be clear that God did create a single type of cat. Besides orphan genes and feline-specific ERVs and viruses, we even have more evidence outside of genetics now that shows the extent of the melanistic coat colors and patterns arose from a single original type that was either small spots or flecks. This is highlighted by changes observed in pelage patterns of jaguars and leopards during their development. Evidence is further backed up by a study by Liu and colleagues using their mathematical models. Since it's clear today that 8 species of feline created all 37 species of feline and 44 cat breeds of today, then it's pretty obvious and feasible that God could have created a single feline to speciate into all the different kinds that we see today. Just like we now know for a fact that all humans descended from a single common female ancestor, and we have all the different varieties and distinct people across the entire Earth today. The original feline, nor any original species, didn't have to make it onto the ark either. This is just an example of how many varieties can come from a single point. Unlike breeds of domestic horses, dogs, sheep, and cattle, some of which are thousands of years old, most cat breeds were developed within the past 150 years, mainly in Europe and the United States. Now, in the textbooks, Phylogeny of carnivores links cats, skunks, raccoon, bear, and wolves, all as having a common ancestor, totally the opposite of creation's predictions. Why do they do this? Why do they assume this in the first place? It is solely because of taxonomy. Anything to them that falls into the carnivore can be linked. Thus, they now have to find other correlations to build their phylogenetic trees. So next, they use homology, which is just ridiculous to me because a raccoon, wolf, and cat, they have more differences than they have similarities. But like all things, anybody can see what they want if they look hard enough. Lastly, they use genetics. But what is a genetic comparison between a cat and a raccoon, or a skunk, or a hyena, or a wolf? Well, that's a good question. Raccoons are more closely related to bears than they are cats. But yet, cats are supposed to be genetically more related to raccoons if their phylogeny tree was correct. See for yourself. Look at the branches. Cats on the bottom right, raccoons on the bottom right, yet bears are on the totally opposite branch on the top left, with a totally different divergent ancestor at the base. Since cats and dogs are supposedly to be genetic cousins of the same tree, they should have a lot of similarities in biology, right? Well, the feline cat genome is predicted to contain 19,493 protein-coding genes and 1,855 non-coding RNAs, similar to the dog. Well, as it turns out, the results for them weren't very good after all. They used an annotated gene set to compare unambiguous mammalian gene orthologs shared between cat, dog, cow, and human. Both human and cow were closer genetically to the cat than the cat was to the dog, which is supposed to be on the same ancestral tree branch and far more closely related to common ancestry if it were true. What a disaster for evolutionists. Even dogs were closer to humans at 95% than cats were to dogs. Then they found cats were closer to humans than dogs were to cats as well. Their common ancestry fell apart with observable, testable genetic data. This just proves how lousy it is to rely on homology or taxonomy to answer any of the tough questions. In conclusion, at least they did say that the cat was very biologically unique. But look, they had to make excuses for finding such genetic discrepancy, such as, there must have been just too much domestication of the modern-day dog's genome, and not much of the cat's, to get this genetic similar match they were looking for. This is their rescuing device for the disaster which showed only a modest comparison between the two species of dog and cat, which were supposed to have more in common than all of the other species which ended up having more, even though those other species, being the cow and human, were well outside of the cat's own taxa-clade species. Can a cat mate with a raccoon since they are supposedly a very close relative to one another? No. Frankly, I have no idea why they try to put these two together, because even taxonomically they are not the same. Cats are pure obligate carnivores, when raccoons are pure omnivores and always have been. It's the same with the skunk. Omnivores, not carnivores. Their entire physiology and internal anatomy are entirely different. So obviously, tossing these animals in via taxonomically, saying that they are all pure carnivora, is bias. They smuggle these animal species into carnivora taxa by using wordplay, altering the true meaning of carnivore, which should be meat-eating organisms which derive their energy and nutrient requirements from a diet consisting mainly of animal tissue. That's right, taxonomy says carnivory is just incorporating vertebrate flesh into the diet. This way, they can add something into carnivora if they need to without them ever being true carnivores or obligate carnivores. Basically, the only reason all these species made it into the carnivora group is because of their blade-like carnassial teeth match. Which is odd to me, because now we know many bears and dog species today do not eat flesh of any kind. So they assume relation mostly based on homologous teeth structure, even though everything else is vastly different, and in the case like bears, even that doesn't line up. That's right, true carnassial teeth do not develop in any bear. From intestinal length, salivatory pH, colon, body shape, etc., very little match down the line with any of these animals. No one would observationally look at a dog, cat, bear, or skunk and presume that they were related at all. Also consider, cats are observational and dogs are olfactory based, so they don't even match in that area. Assumption and hypothesis is all they really have to link common ancestry together. The matter of fact, since they also claim bears are in the same family, remember? Well, multiple bears now has pulled the rug right out from under them, all found to be fully fledged plant-eating vegetarians. As you can see, Them trying to build their phylogenetic tree connecting all these animals together is totally worthless. Stick to genetics and follow it back. Stop assuming relation based primarily on homology. All they're doing is just digging themselves a bigger hole to get out of with all their biased assumptions that they need to be true. Cats are genetically breaking down as well, like all things. That's right, mutations abound in the cat kind as well, with over 250 deleterious mutations that have been documented in domestic cats, including taillessness in Manx cats, congenital defects of white cats, twisted tail syndrome in the American ringtail cats, split foot syndrome in Japanese bobtail. The white tiger lacked the capacity to produce red and yellow pigments. This is all caused by a single point mutation in their gene. This is all just more evidence and proof of genomic decay, which is our model of creation, and not evolution and adaptation, like evolutionists want to tell us. Things are not getting stronger, better, and more resistant. They are degrading and getting worse, and all of the evidence proves it. No storytelling required. We creationists also have allele evidence as well to help us determine a created kind. We say the more rare the allele is, the more mutated. The more common the allele, the more likely it was a created kind. All evidence from existing cat hybrids and lineages, the fossil record evidence, and various other features including molecular sequencing data, genetics, pelage, patterns, and unique virus sensitivities all point to the feline cat family representing a single, clearly delineated basic type. It is reasonable then, with all the evidence available, to say that all these felines arose from a single basal founded cat, and since then they have passed through one or more adaptive radiations and speciations, exploiting their inherent morphogenetic potential to produce all the known existing and extinct species of cat. Thus it is reasonable and logical for us as creationists to assume that there was a single cat that was a created kind, because all of the evidence clearly shows this to be true. Now, could something prior to the Proalirus given rise to it? Sure, why not? And I believe we can identify which cat was created by using the Bible, since it tells us that life after creation ate plants. So if this is true, more vegetative cat evidence is what we should find if this were true, since creation had no need for carnivory. Remember, God created animals to only eat plants. Only after the fall they turned on one another and sin brought death into the world. What evidence is there for this? Are there ancestral cats with molars? Yes. Miacids. The miacid was created with a full complement of molars. Later, the miacid speciated and gave rise to the Proalirus, which went on to populate the entire world we know of known cats today. But the fact remains, no genetic data, or any data for that matter, solidifies that opinion. The Proalirus is the first cat, the first of its created kind, and it populated the entire world we see today. That is what the evidence shows, and that is what we say. What about nymphorids, which are a genus of extinct scimitar or saber-toothed cats only found in North America, are considered not part of the cat order? I am confident that they are wrong on this assumption that nymphorids do not belong to the cat order. The difference between nymphorids and the feline order display only minute skeletal differences, indistinguishable in almost every area. This is why there was such a dispute. But calling an extinct cat a non-cat that is otherwise clearly a cat, simply for classification purposes and based solely on ossification bones in their ear, seems excessive and outright dishonest. I mean, think about it. Evolutionists claim that man is an ape, and yet all apes have 3 bones in their inner ear which give them better hearing, and humans do not. So now they are going to turn around and see bones in this ancient cat ear and say that it is not part of the feline lineage? But why? Why do they do this? Well, because it doesn't match up with their phylogenetic tree that they made. So see how biased they are? If they need something to work, they will just make it up and place it where it wants regardless. Yet when it doesn't match up, they ignore it entirely, in the case with ape and man. Do you see the double standard reasoning? Nymphorids were like lions and tigers today. DNA has proven that yes, they were cats. What happened is that they speciated from the basal ancestor branch and died off because of extinction. Most people do not realize how easy it is for carnivores to die off. And since we're dealing with the cat species that transition to pure obligate carnivores, and carnivores are very susceptible to extinction, then we can see why there are so many extinct cats back in the fossil record. And we do see this even in many cat species alive today, which have died out via extinction because they are carnivorous and ran out of food sources and pervasive selection from hyperdietary specialization. It is proven that hypercarnivory leads to increased vulnerability and extinction. Even wear and cracking on their carnassial teeth may result in the death of the individual due to starvation. Carnassial teeth infection are common in domestic dogs and present as abscesses. As for the ecological niche of large carnivores, these animals typically make up only a small part of the ecological diversity of any given area. This fact directly relating to 1. The availability of food and success rate involved in catching something, and 2. Territorially. If predators equaled or outnumbered their prey, while also having to contend with disease, injury, and other factors of mortality, the ecosystem would not be sustainable. Carnivores would eat themselves out of house and home, literally. Likewise, given the fact that carnivores do not migrate with herds, rather hold down territories, there is only so much room in a given area for carnivores of a particular species to exist. Given this observation, it is often strange when we come across mass assemblages of carnivores in the fossil record. To me, this is more proof that Noah's flood helped these things form, such as massive dinosaur graveyards. Besides, observation and logic tells us that this is not how animals behave in the world we see today, so why assume that such a large number of predators congregated back then? Think about it. If the group doesn't seem to be a family or a social group, why were they together? The Bible has no documentation on what any of the created kinds were, so we have to infer, using as much genetics as possible and even the fossil record, unfortunately. And this is really tough, because almost all life was wiped out because of Noah's flood. The Bible is vague on the topic of created kinds because it is not a salvational topic, nor one that needed much attention. The word kind is actually used to describe many different things. Kind, a large group, are called animal kind. Then it is used again with bird kind. Then it becomes more specific with the hawk kind. So it's far too vague to give a specific definition. People should understand that it is an umbrella term, like mankind. Would you not classify a midget or an albino or a mongoloid part of mankind? Of course you would. The Hebrew word is where the attention should be, not the English word kind. Original word in the Strong's Concordance is that of min, like in minute. It is from an unused root word to portion out or to sort kind. Species, a part of a whole, an amount, a section, or a piece of something. So this would mean that kind is a mixture between subspecies and order, and falls somewhere between that category.
I think the tree of life is an artifact of some early scientific studies that aren't really holding up. So the tree, there may be a bush of life.
Right. Yes. Bush.
I don't like that word.
But that's only in
All right, I concede that one. Yeah.
So there is not a tree of life, and in fact, from our deep sequencing of organisms in the ocean, out of now we have about 60 million different unique gene sets. We found 12 that look like a very, very deep branching, perhaps fourth domain of life.
I think I'm done with you.
Good, shut up. There's nothing to cry about, okay?